Hi, this is Kevin from Let Me Tech You. And in this video, we're going to be talking about how to build your own modules and the reasons for doing that. So when creating Terraform in your own environment, everything that lives within the same folder is essentially a root module. And so what we're going to do is build and use a local module inside of a configuration that we'll be building today. So building modules, you don't always have to do this, but the reasons why a lot of people use modules or build them because it helps reduce code, it helps improve code reusability and reduce, code that's not necessarily, I wouldn't say up to standards, but sometimes when you're, say, working within a team and let's say you're building, a specific, virtual network or virtual machine, it may be best to have modules that build that out because then the way it's built, it's always consistent. So first thing we're going to do here is this folder here. And you want to create a folder, and I'm just called mine called Learn Modules. And within that, I got a folder called Module One. So when building a module, there's a best practice that you kind of want to follow in terms of the structure, and that's you want a license file, which we won't put anything in there, but this is basically something where you'll have, like, say, your MIT. Like, let me see if I can find one up here in one of my other configurations. So if you look in the .terraform modules, enterprise scale, there's probably a license file here. So this is basically what it would look like. Any permissions is hereby granted free of charge. So this is the MIT license. Then you're going to have your markdown files. So you're going to have like a readme .markdown, and this is going to have any information that you'll want the user to know that's related to your module. You can go onto Terraform's website and go to their registry, which I can pull up here. I'm going to go over to this screen. So if you go to the registry and look at some of their other modules, you'll see that those README files are consisting of information that's useful to the user to help them better use their module. So you'll have that, and then also you're going to have a main.tf, outputs.tf, and your variables. Now this could all live within one main.tf file. That's, the name of these don't necessarily dictate what they do. It's just a matter of kind of breaking it out to make it easier to read for you and your teammates. So first thing I'm going to do is so I already had this built out, but basically I'm just going to kind of talk through what's going on here. So inside this Azure resource group folder, we created a module that is building a resource group for you to be able to basically build a resource group off. So there's different reasons for people to build modules. There's ones for virtual networks to build entire virtual networks out. And it makes it easier on you because then if I bring this up again here, where's it at? So if I bring up the registry, if you look at some of these modules, you're essentially helping users create specific type of resources without them having to try to figure out how the code should be laid out. Only thing that they need to do is supply their outputs or their inputs or outputs, and then you kind of just go about your way and not have to worry about everything that's in between. So the source code for modules for the ones in the registry, you can typically see if you go to the GitHub link that it's set to, you'll see in the modules how some of these people break some of this stuff out. So you can see they can kind of seem to be complicated, but they're really not. If you look and see, they're really just breaking these out by folder. So you see you got a main.tf, outputs, variables, and within that, you're going to have normal everyday code that you would use to build your, oh, that did not want to load. Yeah, so if you can see module, security group, source, and then you got your source location, and then basically everything that you need for that module. So that's really it. Nothing too crazy. It just looks like a lot, but there is a lot going on. So that's why if you were to build, say, a Terraform AWS security group and you needed all this other stuff, intertwined in between it, it can get pretty difficult to try to figure that out when it may be easier just to come in, grab the module that's for your provider, and get started using that. So with that now, so I am building a module that's creating an Azure RM resource group. And the thing with modules is you don't want to hard code anything in here that would require input from the user to make it more easier for them to understand what they need to add and what you should add. So for resource groups, for example, the name and location are required for it to be built. So that's not something you want to make optional for the user. You want that to be something that's filled in. And how you do that is we got our variable here, our arguments here, and then inside of our variables.tf, I have no default for the resource group name or the location. So if this was like, say, something where it needed to be in a specific region or it needed to be a specific name, like for instance, like I think when you're creating like a Bastion host, for example, the subnet needs to be a specific name. So that's not something you may want to have the user change. So you might hard code that. Or there could be some default values you can add because you don't want the user to necessarily worry about it, or it's not really required, whether it be like, say, HTTPS settings or firewall settings, stuff like that. So leaving it default means that the user will have to put something in. So we got the Azure RM, the resource group folder created, the module in there. Now inside of our main.tf, we got our provider block here with our resource group. And then so we got a module block that's basically saying our source module, the source of our module is .modules Azure resource group. And then resource group name, and then the resource group location. So now that we built that, what we need to do is we need to bring that into our Terraform. So what I'm going to do is, I actually had ran this before. Let me take these out. And so let's move this as well. So I can do a Terraform get, and that basically just brings my module in. It's already, you can do a Terraform init as well. No directory has, oh, well, let me go down one more block. Terraform get. Terraform. And so that's going to pull down any plugins. It's going to get your lock file going. It's going to actually, and then so all that's set. So now that we're not using our variables or outputs, but basically when you're creating modules, you may want to put outputs for the user to be able to extrapolate information from the module that they will need. So let's say it's a subnet and they need to be able to get the subnet ID or the name or the prefix, all that type of stuff. You'll want to put outputs for them to be able to, do that. So you have your output, the output name, a description of the output, and then the value. So my value is Azure RM resource group.main.name. So the user could call this output and get the resource group name that's being built. So now what I'll do is I'll run this Terraform plan, and I should get one resource group to be created. So it might take a little bit of time here. There we go. So now that this is showing one to be created, it's saying module.resourcegroup.azurem resourcegroup.main will be created. So I can do a Terraform apply, and I'm just going to do an auto approve. So this is going to deploy that resource group. using our locally built module. So that's really it as far as like getting started with modules. When there's really not a good way to kind of explain when you should create modules or when you shouldn't. Sometimes if you're doing something that's needing to be repeated, maybe across specific teams. So let's say, for example, you are building a VM that's built a virtual machine, but you would like it to be always consistent across the board with the same type of information, naming conventions, stuff like that. You could turn it into a module, and you can actually lift and shift that to another team, or they can use that same directory to just pull their information from. You might even have a private repository where you can stick it at, and then that way people can call that directly and build Terraform off of that. So it's really, you kind of want to, err on the side of caution when creating too many modules, and only because it can maybe make readability a little harder than what it should be. So if you have any questions in regards to this setup, drop me a comment down below and I'll be sure to get back with you. Again, thanks for tuning in. Hope to see you next time.